There is a country on this earth where 25 million people live completely cut off from the modern world, and almost no outsider has ever truly seen what happens inside it. Every night, when satellites photograph the Earth from space, the same image appears and the same silence follows. That country is North Korea. And the darkness you see on that satellite image is not an accident of geography. It is a decision. Move now above the Korean peninsula and feel what that image actually means. South Korea glows below you, with highways, cities, and millions of screens burning bright across a modern nation that never sleeps. Then, follow the peninsula northward and watch something happen that no other place on Earth does in quite the same way. The light disappears. Not gradually, not slowly, but completely, as if someone drew a line across the land and said everything above this point belongs to a different world entirely. Below that line, the 21st century. Above it, a darkness so total and so deliberate that it shows up from space. Now descend toward that darkness and feel the air change as you approach. The border comes into view first, a narrow strip of land stretching across the peninsula where soldiers face each other across a distance you could cross on foot in under a minute. Yet almost no one has legally crossed in over 70 years. Guard towers rise from the tree line. Fences disappear into mountains on both sides. And beyond that border, a country begins that operates by rules the outside world was never meant to understand. This is not ancient history, gathering dust somewhere. This is a living place, breathing and moving right now, while the rest of the world looks the other way. And somewhere inside that darkness, behind those walls, beyond that border, 25 million people are waking up this morning inside a system most humans on Earth will never fully see. What their lives actually look like, what they are told, what they are shown, and what is kept from them entirely, is the journey that is about to begin. And nothing you find inside will look quite like anything you expected. Soar above the Korean peninsula and watch something that should not exist. A single nation, one language, one history, one people, split directly in half by a line drawn in 1953 that was never supposed to be permanent and has now lasted over 70 years. The demilitarized zone stretches 160 miles across the peninsula and 2.5 miles wide. And despite its name, it is the most heavily militarized strip of land on the entire planet. Millions of landmines lie buried beneath its soil. Guard towers face each other from both sides with loaded weapons. And the silence that hangs over it has not broken since the day the ink dried on that ceasefire agreement. Descend now toward Panmunjom, the only point along this border where soldiers from both Koreas stand close enough to see each other's faces and feel the full weight of what this line actually did to real people. Families separated in 1953 have never spoken since. They have never written letters, never made phone calls, and in most cases, never learned whether the people they loved on the other side even survived. A mother separated from her child, a husband cut off from his wife, a brother who walked north one morning and simply never came back. This is not a border between two countries. This is a wound that never healed. Dressed in barbed wire and watched by soldiers who were born long after the cut was made. North Korea shares an 880-mile border with China to the north and a small 11-mile border with Russia to the northeast, both heavily controlled, making the country physically sealed from every direction a person might try to leave. The few foreigners permitted to enter must book through state-approved agencies, accept government minders who follow them everywhere, and obey strict rules about cameras, conversations, and movement. But the most unsettling truth about this border is not its weapons or its walls. It is that the people living on the northern side have been told the border exists to protect them from a world that wants to destroy everything they have. And the government that told them that did not stop at building walls. It built something far more powerful than any border. It built a religion around itself. And that story begins with a single family. Fly above Pyongyang and count the faces. Not living faces, but bronze, stone, and painted faces staring down from every building, every public square, every classroom, and every living room across the entire country. 3 generations of one family, watching from above. Present in every space a North Korean citizen occupies from the moment they are born until the moment they die. This is not decoration. This is doctrine. Kim Il-sung founded North Korea in 1948, declared himself eternal president, and built a personality cult so complete that even after his death in 1994, he remains the country's official head of state. A dead man, still ruling a living nation. His son, Kim Jong-il, continued the dynasty with equal devotion to its mythology. And his grandson, Kim Jong-un, now commands it with nuclear weapons, military parades, and a surveillance apparatus that reaches into every home in the country. 3 men, 3 generations. One unbroken grip on 25 million lives. Descend now toward the Mansudae Grand Monuments, where 2 66-foot bronze statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il stand on a hill above the capital. And watch citizens arrive in organized rows, bow deeply, place flowers at the base, and retreat in complete silence. What you are watching is not voluntary respect. It is mandatory devotion, enforced by law, where failing to bow with sufficient sincerity or allowing dust to gather on the mandatory portrait hanging in your home can bring punishment not just to you, but to your entire family. North Korea even measures time differently because of this dynasty, counting years from Kim Il-sung's birth in 1912 on a calendar called Juche, making the year 2026 the year Juche 115. But the dynasty's most powerful weapon was never fear alone. It was the carefully constructed belief that the Kim family loves its people, provides for them, and protects them from a world that wants them destroyed. And to perform that belief convincingly, they needed a stage. So they built one. Soar above Pyongyang and see something that takes a moment to fully understand. A capital city that looks almost too perfect, with wide boulevards built for military parades rather than daily traffic. Pastel-colored apartment towers standing in geometric rows, and monuments so oversized they make the humans walking beneath them look like they were placed there deliberately to show the scale of power. 3 million people live here, but living in Pyongyang is not a right that any North Korean is simply born into. It is a privilege granted by the government, earned through loyalty, family background, and political usefulness, and taken away the moment that usefulness runs out. In North Korea, displeasing the regime does not just cost you your job, it costs you your address. Descend toward the Arch of Triumph and notice something the official guides always mention with visible pride. It was built 5 meters taller than its famous model in Paris, because in Pyongyang, every monument is a message, and every boulevard is a propaganda poster stretched across asphalt. Further along the skyline, the Rogyong Hotel rises 105 stories into the sky like a concrete pyramid. Begun in 1987, never finished, never opened. A ghost skyscraper haunting the capital as quiet proof that ambition without resources builds monuments to failure rather than progress. Every morning across this city, motivational brigades line the commute routes, performing patriotic music through loudspeakers and cheering workers heading to their state-assigned jobs. Compulsory enthusiasm delivered on schedule to citizens who have never been asked whether they want it. But Pyongyang's performance has cracks running through it that no amount of fresh paint fully covers. Blackouts strike regularly across the capital. Apartment buildings stand without heating in winter, while thermometers are fixed to walls, showing false temperatures for visiting cameras. The wide boulevards built for parades sit eerily empty most hours of the day because fuel is scarce and most citizens cannot afford cars. The stage is magnificent, but the city living behind it tells a completely different story, and the system that decides which story each citizen gets to live is more precise, more calculated, and more deeply personal than anything the monuments above suggest. Fly above North Korea and understand that beneath the parades, the monuments, and the perfectly staged boulevards operates a system so thorough and so permanent that every citizen is effectively sorted at birth into a category that will determine everything about their life before they are old enough to speak. The system has a name. It is called Songbun, and it divides the entire population into 3 classifications that follow a family across generations like a shadow that never lifts. The core class carries the most loyal families, rewarded with Pyongyang residence, better food access, and greater opportunity. The wavering class sits in the middle, tolerated but watched. And the hostile class carries the families of anyone who ever questioned, resisted, or simply stood on the wrong side of history in 1950, punished with rural exile, limited opportunity, and permanent surveillance that extends to their children and their children's children. Pull closer and feel what this means for a real person living inside it. A brilliant student born into a hostile family cannot attend university, cannot live in the capital, and cannot change the classification attached to their name no matter how hard they work, how loyally they behave, or how many years pass. There is no appeal process, no path to reclassification, and no mechanism for redemption. Your grandfather's political position in 1950 determines your address, your career, and your children's future in 2026. The sentence was written before you were born, by people you never knew, for reasons you had no part in. Beyond Songbun, the state assigns every citizen their job without application or interview, requires government permits for travel between cities, and places a designated house manager inside every apartment building to monitor residents, report suspicious behavior, and ensure that mandatory political study sessions are attended without absence. But the most unsettling truth about this system is not the classification itself. It is that generations of citizens have lived inside it so completely that many have come to believe their position is natural, fair, and simply the way the world works. And a mind that believes its cage is normal is a mind the regime never has to lock again. Descend into the Pyongyang metro and feel the ground swallow you deeper than any ordinary city allows. These stations were built so far underground that they double as nuclear shelters, and every wall along the platform carries something the regime needs its citizens to see. Propaganda murals stretch across the stone in vivid color. Newspapers mounted in frames display only state-approved stories. Loudspeakers push political messages through the tunnels at a volume and frequency that makes silence feel like something that no longer belongs here. Look at the metro cars themselves and notice something unexpected. They are old models purchased from West Berlin, still carrying faint engravings left by German youth who once rode them in a country where reading whatever you wanted was simply called Tuesday. In North Korea, the internet does not exist for ordinary citizens. There is no Google, no social media, no email to foreign countries, and no access to any information the government has not personally constructed and approved. Instead, citizens access an internal network called Kwangmyong, containing only 28 government-approved content providers, offering sanitized educational material and carefully measured doses of political messaging. Every newspaper, every television channel, and every radio station in the country broadcasts only what the Korean Workers' Party has decided the population should believe. And every week, citizens attend mandatory self-criticism sessions where they confess personal shortcomings and pledge renewed loyalty, a practice designed to interrupt independent thought before it has the chance to fully form. Even physical appearance carries the state's instruction, with women permitted only 18 approved haircut styles and men permitted only 10. External conformity pressed onto the body as a daily reminder of who holds authority over everything. The walls around the mind are invisible, but they are the strongest walls North Korea has ever built. A person who has never heard a different opinion, never read a foreign headline, and never received information from any source outside the state does not know what they are missing. They only know what they have been given. But there is one thing the regime's information wall was never built to stop. And that thing was hunger. Fly above North Korea's economic landscape and hold the contradiction in full view. The propaganda declares that the state provides everything, that no citizen goes without, and that the system built by the Kim dynasty delivers abundance to every corner of the country. But the country that makes this declaration is also a country where international sanctions have strangled the flow of oil, gas, food, and industrial materials for decades, leaving 25 million people to survive on whatever the gap between promise and reality manages to produce. And in that gap, something grew that the regime never planned for and has never been able to fully stop. Informal markets called jangmadang spread quietly across every city and town in North Korea. Street-level trading networks where citizens buy and sell food, clothing, electronics, and smuggled goods that the planned economy was supposed to make completely unnecessary. Descend toward the edge of any North Korean city before dawn and watch what the cameras are never allowed to film. Women arrange makeshift stalls in the gray morning light, exchanging rice for cooking oil, trading shoes for medicine, and conducting commerce that the government officially pretends is not happening. Every transaction is technically illegal. Every seller risks punishment severe enough to destroy their family. Every buyer, simply by showing up, acknowledges out loud that the state's promises are not enough to live on. Yet without these markets, the shortages would become something far worse than inconvenience. The government understands this, and so it tolerates what it cannot bring itself to admit exists. The daily reality behind the propaganda is visible in the numbers. Citizens receive state rations of rice and cabbage, but must purchase everything else from markets where a single can of Nescafe costs $15 against monthly wages of approximately $110. Apartments sit unheated through winter. Blackouts strike daily across cities where the lights are supposed to represent socialist achievement. But the jangmadang created something the regime never intended to give its people. A generation of North Koreans who learned through daily survival that the state lies about provision, that independence keeps you alive where obedience leaves you hungry, and that the system's promises and the system's reality are two entirely different countries. And the country the regime tries hardest to hide is not on any map it has ever willingly shared. Soar beyond Pyongyang's outskirts and watch the performance end in real time. The wide boulevards narrow into cracked roads that carry almost no traffic. The pastel-colored towers give way to gray concrete buildings that nobody painted for cameras. The carefully maintained showcase the regime built for outside eyes dissolves into a countryside that the government has spent decades working to keep those eyes away from. Rural North Korea does not operate on the same frequency as the capital. It operates on a different century. Farming communities sit in valleys where electricity arrives unpredictably, and sometimes not at all. Ox-drawn carts move along roads where vehicles should be. Labor brigades clear ice from highways with hand tools because the machinery that would make the work easier does not exist. Or if it does, the fuel to run it ran out long ago. Descend toward Wonsan, a provincial capital sitting on the coast, and feel what it means to arrive somewhere that was never built to receive outside eyes. Hotels stand without heating in winter. Hot water runs for 2 hours daily and then stops. Entire neighborhoods go dark during blackouts that stretch through the night, while the thermometers fixed to walls inside hotel rooms display temperatures the rooms have not actually reached. Officials react to unannounced foreign visitors with visible panic because the provinces were never staged for cameras, never rehearsed for delegations, and were never designed to perform the perfection that Pyongyang promises the outside world. Before sanctions tightened, Wonsan connected to Japan by ferry, a vital economic link that closed in 2006 and left ships stranded in the harbor where they remain today. Ghost ships carrying dead North Korean fishermen have washed ashore in Japan repeatedly since then, their crews having run out of fuel and food in vessels too damaged to return home because sanctions prevent spare parts from entering the country. But the regime uses the provinces deliberately, organizing rural workers onto buses headed for Pyongyang's water parks, riding clubs, and leisure facilities, showing them what the capital offers so that loyalty feels like a path towards something worth wanting. The dream of a better address keeps the machinery of obedience running in places the cameras were never meant to find. And the machinery runs on more than dreams. It runs on something the regime has perfected over 3 generations, a punishment so total and so permanent that even thinking about resistance carries a price no single person is ever asked to pay alone. Fly above North Korea's remote mountain regions and understand what the satellite images have already confirmed and the regime continues to deny. At least 4 political prison camps operate in these mountains. Holding an estimated 120,000 people whose only crime was disloyalty, or whose family members' disloyalty was enough to condemn them by blood alone. The system that governs punishment here follows a rule that has no equivalent anywhere else in the modern world. If one person commits a political offense, criticizing the leader, attempting to defect, or simply possessing a smuggled USB drive with foreign content on it, their parents, their children, and their grandchildren can all be imprisoned alongside them. Your words can send people to prison camps who have not yet been born. Pull closer and feel the full weight of what that means for a person living inside this system every single day. A single sentence spoken in frustration. A single question asked too honestly. A single moment of doubt expressed to the wrong person in the wrong room. Any one of these things can destroy not just your life, but the lives of your children and the lives of their children after them. People who do not yet exist, paying a sentence for words they never heard, spoken by a person they never knew. This is not simply surveillance. This is control, exercised through bloodline, through the weaponization of family love into something closer to family terror, where the people you love most become the reason you stay silent most completely. Human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, have documented forced labor, starvation rations, public executions, and torture within facilities, identified through satellite imagery and defector testimony. And yet, when journalists ask officials directly, the response arrives with a polite smile and a rehearsed deflection that sounds reasonable until you remember that every person who could contradict it is sitting behind walls no journalist has ever crossed. The camps officially do not exist. But the silence of the people inside them is the loudest sound North Korea makes. Descend into the small moments that the carefully managed schedule almost never allows a camera to reach. A factory worker glues shoes in an unheated room without gloves because wearing them, as her supervisor explains, without embarrassment, would only slow her down. A 5-year-old girl performs Prelude in D minor by Bach on a kindergarten piano after allegedly 1 year of lessons, her fingers moving across the keys with a precision that takes visitors a moment to fully process. A figure skater training for international competition is asked what his greatest dream in sports looks like, and without hesitation, without irony, and without any sign that the answer surprises even him, he says it is a photograph with the supreme leader. These are not performances constructed for foreign cameras. They are windows into a world where the system has already shaped what a person learns to want. Move through the Gyeongsang kindergarten and watch children draw snowmen in perfect silence, stock still, disciplined. Not a single child disrupting the room with the ordinary restlessness that fills every other kindergarten on Earth. Then watch the lights go out during a blackout and notice what does not happen. No child flinches. No child cries. No child looks around with confusion because darkness arrived without warning. They simply sit in the sudden quiet, with a calmness so complete, it takes longer than it should to understand what you are actually seeing. The system has already taught them that discomfort is not something you question, that the world simply is what it is, and your feelings about it were never part of the arrangement. The soccer academy near the capital selects only 30 children per year from thousands of applicants, placing them in dormitories beneath portraits of the Kim dynasty and training them for 9 hours daily with loyalty woven into every drill. Workers across the country earn approximately $110 per month with no career choice available and no mechanism to request otherwise. And when asked whether dissatisfaction exists anywhere inside the system, officials answer with absolute certainty, and a smile so practiced it has become indistinguishable from belief. But occasionally, in the split-second hesitation before a rehearsed answer arrives, something crosses a face that no amount of training fully erases. The performance is not as complete as the regime believes, and the people living inside it know things about survival, about endurance, and about the quiet persistence of being human that no system has ever successfully legislated away. Rise above the Korean peninsula one final time and see what the satellites see every single night. South Korea blazes below you, highways and cities and millions of screens burning bright across a modern nation that never fully sleeps. And right above it, where 25 million people live out their entire lives, the darkness returns. Total, deliberate, and so complete that the country seems to simply vanish from the surface of the earth. That darkness is not a power failure waiting to be fixed. It is the most honest portrait North Korea has ever produced, showing the world exactly what happens when a nation seals itself shut, controls every resource down to the last kilowatt, and places regime survival above the lives of the people the regime claims to protect. Hold this image, and let it carry the full weight of everything this journey moved through. The border that split a single nation into two worlds separated by centuries. The dynasty that turned political power into religious worship. The capital built as a stage set for an audience that was never its own citizens. The songbun system that sorted souls at birth and handed children the sentences their grandparents earned. The information walls that made an entire population fluent in a reality the regime constructed from scratch. The shadow markets where survival required breaking every rule the state ever wrote. The countryside that starves in a silence. The capital's monuments were built to drown out. The prison camps in the mountains that officially do not exist. And the faces behind all of it, thinking thoughts they cannot share, carrying questions they cannot ask, living lives the rest of the world can see from space but cannot reach. North Korea spends an estimated 25% of its GDP on military expenditure, while citizens lack heating, electricity, and adequate food, maintaining the fourth largest army on Earth, in a country where most people cannot keep their apartments warm through winter. But the darkness is not permanent, and it has never been completely sealed. Every smuggled USB drive crossing the Chinese border is a crack. Every defector's testimony is a pixel of light in the blackout. Every satellite image studied by an analyst somewhere is proof that no system of secrecy, however total it believes itself to be, lasts forever. The darkness has shown everything it is willing to show. Now only one question remains, and it does not belong to North Korea. It belongs to everyone watching from the light. North Korea is not merely the most secretive country on Earth. It is the most complete experiment in human control ever constructed. A system where everything a person eats, wears, thinks, says, and becomes is determined by a single family's grip on power, maintained through an isolation so total that 25 million people have no way to verify whether anything they have ever been told is true. This is not a failed state. This is a functioning machine built for one purpose: the preservation of a dynasty disguised as a nation. We came seeking locked doors and hidden corridors. What we found is something worse than secrecy. A system so complete that the people living inside it do not know they are inside it. Citizens who genuinely believe their leader loves them, who genuinely fear a world they have never seen, and who cannot imagine that life beyond the border is anything other than what the propaganda describes. The deepest form of secrecy is not hiding the truth from people. It is convincing them that the lie is the truth, and that seeking anything else is betrayal. Somewhere in North Korea right now, a child sits in a kindergarten drawing snowmen in silence. A factory worker glues shoes without gloves. A soldier stands at the border staring south. None of them can read these words. None of them know this documentary exists. And that silence, that enforced, permanent, generational silence, is the most disturbing sound on Earth. We began with a satellite image showing a country of 25 million people swallowed by darkness. Now, you know what that darkness contains. Not emptiness, not absence. Lives. Millions of them. Sealed behind walls no camera can fully penetrate, and no outsider can truly comprehend. When an entire nation disappears behind secrecy, the question is never only about the regime that builds the walls. It is about the world that stops trying to see over them. North Korea should not exist in the 21st century. And yet, here it stands, the dynasty still ruling, the statues still towering, the kindergarten still producing silent children, and the darkness still covering the peninsula every night like a blanket the regime pulls deliberately over 25 million lives. This was never a journey to a destination. It was a journey into a machine built to control, performed to deceive, and maintained through a silence so complete that truth itself becomes the enemy. You now know what most people on Earth will never know. And that knowledge carries weight because those 25 million people cannot carry it themselves. If this documentary opened your eyes to what life truly looks like behind the world's most closed borders, share it with someone who has only ever seen the headlines. Subscribe to join every journey into the places the world chooses to ignore, but desperately needs to understand. Every view, every share, and every conversation about what happens inside North Korea is a small crack in the wall of silence. Now tell me honestly in the comments, what disturbed you most about what you witnessed here today? Because what we choose to see determines what we allow to continue.